You already know what it is. It's Big Pressure TV. In the words of DJ Khaled, we got another one. We got the God Magnetic Sun on deck. Me personally, I call him the Dr. Sebi of the city. Because while a lot of young guys, they went out there and bought Hellcats, they buying jewelry, they throwing bands in the club, the guy went out and secured them some land and started growing his own food and started a business from out the soil, like real deal getting it out the mud. So before we tap into who Magnetic Sun is, let the people know who you are. Where you from? What was your upbringing?
Peace. So my name is Magnetic Sun, Ruler Allah, 5%er.
Peace to the God.
Nation of Gods and Earths. From Detroit, East Side, Harper and Dan Dyke. Born 1980. To give you a time frame of the era in which I grew up, all through the 80s and through the 90s. You know.
Off top. Now at some point, the God, you went away and did time, right?
Yeah.
How many bits did you do?
2.
Talk about
My first one was 15. I was 15, and I did 3 years up at Maxie Boys Training School. Well, really 2 years at Maxie Boys Training School, and then 8.5 months or so at the boot camp. And,
what was that experience like?
at the time, it was rough going in at 15. Maxie's at the time was like maximum security for juveniles. The only other thing they had to hang over our head was Green Oaks or prison.
Right.
So, of course, nobody wanted to go to Green Oaks because them boys didn't get to see the light of day. They was literally in their basement.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time in my life, 15, you know, I couldn't read or write. So that would had to be one of the best things that happened to me was going to juvie because I learned how to read and write. It was this short queen named Miss Cross.
Okay.
Who took the time with me and taught me how to read and write. We had these journals, and we had to do the program, and the program was steps. So in writing in my journal, when she was my advocate, she noticed it immediately. I can't read nothing this boy's saying. And so she would take words out of my journal that I should know how to spell. And that's how she made my spelling list every week out of my journal.
That's deep.
And I had to learn, I had to write them words, I had to write the definitions. And at the end of the week, she gave me a spelling test. And that went on for the whole 24 months I was there.
So you learned how to build your lexicon while in juvenile.
Yeah.
And you didn't get it from the school system. What's the last grade you completed?
I passed 6th grade with straight F's. They
Nice.
pushed me to the 7th grade with straight F's.
And they just passed you.
Pushed me straight to the 7th grade. So I wouldn't even say I passed the 6th.
That's interesting. Now at some point you end up going to prison though. How old were you when you went to prison?
25.
What was that experience like for you? And the reason why we ask these questions, or I ask these questions, because I want people to get a glimpse of the individuals who went through those dark chambers, right? And how in the darkest moment of your life, you know what I mean, the reality of God was fashioned and molded before we tap into everything you got going on now.
Prison was another learning experience to me because I had already did time. I had already been away from my family for years.
You was already conditioned for it, basically.
Yeah. Actually, I grew up in my first 5 years of my life was in a foster home. So, whereas a lot of kids, their worst fear in life is to lose their mama. I lost my mama when I was 1.5, and I remember that. So that was no longer a fear for me in my life, losing my mama. Going to prison, there it is, I lost it again. Going to juvie, I lost it again. So I didn't have that fear that most kids have of losing their mother.
Right.
I went through that at 1.5. So it was just more time, you know. But in this situation, I recognized that I was surrounded by killers and wasn't no structure. Wasn't no program.
Right, exactly.
You gotta make your own program.
Most definitely.
So going in, I had started studying about 6 months before I went in. Cause when you know you're going to jail You know you going. Ain't no ifs, ands, buts about it. You going.
Right,
You
right.
just out on borrowed time.
Right.
So
at some point you knew you was going, like you going, you know.
Oh, I knew I couldn't beat it.
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't beat the case.
I'm saying even when you came from juvenile, did at some point that you realize, like, the way you was moving and how you was out there moving, did you realize, I know I'm either go to prison or I'm possibly pass at a young age?
No.
Okay.
No, I never seen that for myself.
Okay.
I would never come back young.
No, man.
I ain't see that.
Yeah.
I knew enough, or I had enough foresight to know I was gonna do something. Because I was intelligent. But I just didn't have all of that book knowledge from school.
My man.
You see what I'm saying? I wanted to do something, but I was still rambunctious coming out of juvie because I didn't have that 3 or 4 years like everybody else had to have fun. So I was still trying to just get it in and have fun.
Right.
I wasn't thinking about no future. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I wasn't thinking about prison either. Don't nobody think about that until it's in their face. So when I knew that I was going, you know, everybody get that God. Oh God, please. Oh God. Niggas started running to church and
Right.
hit the mosque and all this other shit. So I was studying it, right? I'm hoping that this mysteries God was gonna get me out of this shit one more time.
Most definitely.
You feeling me?
That's a hell of a word you said, the mystery God.
Right? Was gonna get me out of this shit one more time. So at the God, it wasn't at the time, it wasn't no mystery to me. This was 100%. This is what I was taught all my life, and this is where I'm supposed to go. To
Right.
God with this.
Right.
So I started studying. I started studying to be a pastor. I didn't just start going to church. I started literally studying.
That's deep.
Right? And in that, I found this book one day. I was getting my hair cut, and I went into the, right next door to the barber shop. It was the Wanubian store, bookstore. So
Right.
I went in there, bam, and just looking around, and my man's gave me a book. Who is the real Messiah? So I'm already studying, and then here it go, who is the real Messiah? So I took that home and smoked that over.
Right.
So that already started me on my journey. So I ended up going to the joint maybe 3 months later. As soon as I got there.
So that seed was already planted that you had something deeper to search for.
Yeah.
Even while you took that, yeah.
Because I had started on the street.
Right.
Right. So when I got there, my mind was already straight on the books. It didn't take me a minute to figure out what I'm gonna do. As soon as I got there, I was on the books. I was getting books sent to me in the county jail.
So instead of looking at it like you was in prison, you turned it into a university.
Yeah, monastery.
Yeah, a monastery. That's even better.
Yeah.
Ain't no doubt. Now, how much time did you do?
60 months.
At what point did you come into the knowledge yourself? Because you know you Tron living, you God body.
I had to been down 2 years.
Okay.
So that would have been 2007. I got 120. And my enlightener, by that time I had already left the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
By 2007, I wasn't in the Bible no more. I was studying Egypt.
Yeah, you going to the root of civilization
Yeah.
and tapping. Yeah, you dig it now.
Because the Bible had took me to Egypt.
Right.
No question. Like, I made my own curriculum. Mind you, I don't have all of that shit from school in my head. None of that's in there.
You eradicated all that.
It wasn't never there.
Right.
It didn't get there.
Mm.
So therefore, I didn't have none of the stumbling blocks to overcome from mainstream curriculum.
Talk it.
So,
Talk.
so I was able to take and make my own curriculum and actually look at other subjects and not have a bias against it already. Because somebody already planted a seed.
Right.
That seed hadn't been planted. So I could go into research with no bias. See? And I think that was one of the greatest things that helped me along my journey.
Most definitely.
But the Bible took me it took me to Egypt. So by the time I found 120, I was telling somebody how I was God, right? Using scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all I know at the time. And throwing a little bit of Egyptian teaching in there too.
Right.
But mainly scripture, because most people you talk to is Christian.
Right.
In the joint, we call them what? Bible thumpers.
Right.
Right?
They know their Bible front and back.
Right, so this is who I'm telling and explaining I'm God. Meanwhile, my bunkie had just been my bunkie maybe 2 weeks, a hot boy. And He was like, you 5%? I was like, what?
You didn't even know what that is.
Oblivious.
Yeah.
You God body? What?
But you already knew the language.
No, I ain't know none of that.
How did he assume that you was God?
Because I had told somebody and was explaining to him that I was God out of the scripture.
So you already accepted the fact that you was God without
From the
even
Bible.
knowing the knowledge of self.
From the Bible.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
From the Bible. Because
Yeah.
once in my studies, it's just common sense to me that if I'm created in the likeness and the image, but it took me a while to get to this point. If you created in the likeness and image and your daddy God, he can't have nothing but God.
True indeed.
The black man can't have nothing but a black child, and the white man can't have nothing but a white. So therefore, if God made me, then I'm God. We ain't all the
Like you
other
said
shit
in
is
the book,
just bullshit.
ye are all God's
That's
children of the Most
exactly,
High
and that's
God.
later on when Jesus quote unquote said.
True
So it
indeed.
didn't take me. I got the message.
And then you met your enlightenment.
He was sitting on the bunk when he heard me breaking this down and was like, peace God. And I was like, what? He was like, you God? I'm like, yeah. He was like, you 5%? I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Right.
You God body? I don't know what that is. He was like, I got something for you when we come back from child.
And what he have for you?
120. Student enrollment.
Who was the original man? Who was the colored man?
The original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, father of civilization, God of the universe.
Now, how did that impact your psychic versus knowing or learning everything that you was taught at a young age when you heard that statement? How did that impact your mind?
Well, by then I had already found, because my daddy told me something, and he said, when you study religion, study history.
Ooh, history best rewards is research.
And you can't study religion unless you study in history alongside.
Talk that talk, guys.
So I knew that when I was going into my studies. Okay? So I had already found out that Christianity was made by Constantine and Constantinople, 223 AD, and all of these other Nicene councils and all of that. I had already found that research.
Right.
Right? And then one side of my family was Jehovah's Witness, and they taught the research. So I had studied and already knew that Christianity was a made religion. Right? So
Okay.
it wasn't hard for me. That's how I came to the conclusion. I had left the Bible. I wasn't on religion no more. I was
Right.
just researching.
Right.
I had then came to the conclusion that the Bible was history
Ooh.
and a lot of mystery teachings.
Yeah.
Because I was studying Egypt. And that's what allowed me to get into the mystery teachings and find them in the Bible. And knowing the history of how it was created, Constantine and all of them, the popes or these great writers, scholars of the time coming through writing, quote unquote, Shakespeare and all of them.
When they implemented the cross and said, in the name of this symbol, we conquer.
Constantine so-called seen the circle and the cross in the sky. Well, that circle was the sun god symbol, quote unquote, pagan sun god symbol. But that symbol was also the symbol in Egypt and the symbol over in West Africa. That table, that circle with the cross in it, that's the divining tray that we throw the shells on and read the shells. That cross represents the 4 quadrants and a whole bunch of things you can see up in there.
Right.
Past, present, and future, if they talking to you from the spirit realm or the earth realm. But you only can know that by doing the research and going back. Right? So when I heard that statement, the original man is an Asiatic black man making on the claim of the planet Earth, father of civilization, God of the universe.
Let's go.
I wasn't taken back for a minute because I had already knew this. But for somebody to come and tell me, now you like, nigga, you ain't crazy.
To affirm it or confirm it in your life.
Because you think you crazy.
Right.
Everybody gonna tell you crazy. You can't go and say you God, you gonna go to a mental institution, man.
Most definitely.
But when somebody come in this literature to confirm what you saying, young man, ain't falsehood. Shit, that felt, I was like, oh yeah, man, I ain't alone.
I got it.
I ain't alone. So I just started that really set me on my journey.
Now, a lot of our young brothers out here, right, we know that they identify themselves as niggas. Some of them identify themselves as steppers and whatever word they use nowadays, right? What would you say to a young guy who may not even have a desire to understand or comprehend that he's God? What would you say to a young brother who out here, man, and you know, in his mind he a nigga, in his mind he a stepper, in his mind he whatever he think he is, but he don't think he God. He don't think he true and living.
All right, man. So look, God, I've been studying so long, and I done studied over so many different rounds of teaching, right? To that individual, I wouldn't say shit. I wouldn't say shit to him.
Right. Now why is that?
Because that's his journey. It ain't even my job to interrupt what the fuck he here doing. It's not my job.
Right.
It's only my duty as a 5%er. So if I ain't 5%, I don't have to say shit to him.
Right.
But I took on the duty of a 5%er to say something.
Now we talking. Now we talking. Because the duty of
That's
the
my civilized duty
Most
to
definitely.
teach. So it's teachings that tell me, like in Buddhism, I'm not even supposed to interrupt that man like path.
Right.
Because me even saying something to him can influence him in some kind of way. And now I got to deal with that too, because I was at fault for however he go. But then as a 5%er, I took the duty to teach civilization.
Most definitely.
Right? So if I'm looking at it as that, if I'm forced to talk to this individual, I'm just start building with it. I try to greet brothers as God, and that generally spark
Interest or a conversation.
exactly.
Yeah.
That can spark a conversation, greeting somebody as God.
Peace, God.
Yeah, or even in conversation, keep saying God when you talking to them.
Right.
See, that can spark something. Just that alone. And what would I say to him? I wouldn't be trying to say too much of nothing to him, because but the first degree, man, really that. Who is the original man?
Yeah.
Because that's your foundation. The first degree is your foundation.
Getting in the
Not
top
120. 120 is the teaching. The first degree is your foundation.
That's it.
See. So I would definitely have to give him that. And if a person don't have no questions behind who is the original man and the answer, come on, man. I'm not finna be praying. I'm not finna cast my pearls among swine. Once I realized I done did my
He may not be ready.
I done did my due diligence.
Yes. So it may have been your job, even with asking the question, just simply plant the seed. And somebody else will come along, you know what I mean, and
Because
should
we
water
seed
the
planters.
seed, to cultivate
Yeah,
the seed.
planters.
Yeah. I get you on that, beloved. Now let me ask you this. You came into the knowledge yourself. You started growing into the knowledge yourself, right? And then you made your transition from being inside to coming back out into the free cipher, right? Out of everything you could have chose to invest your money in, spend your money on, because you know everybody else out here, they're attracted to the bling, they're attracted to, you know what I mean, the trinkets, they're attracted by the jewels and things of that nature, right? The God in this civilization said, I'm gonna buy land. Because we know we're not free until you purchase land. What inspired you to say, I'm gonna go buy some land and start investing my seed in the soil? Everybody else getting it out the mud, but you getting it out the mud in real life and benefiting from it.
Well, I would have to say the 12 Jews. And when first time I seen 12 Jews was with 120. But later on I found out the Jew 112 Jews not really part of the 120. It's kind of like a plus degree, right? So all that time I was thinking it was part of actual 120. But even as a plus degree, that's where I got food, clothing, and shelter.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Food, clothing, and shelter.
Are essential.
And then the student enrollment. Useful land. How much useful land? It even asks how much useful land does the original man control.
Right.
So you ain't even gotta leave the first degree to get up, to get the goddamn message. You see what I'm saying?
Most definitely.
So that's what started. And then Elijah Muhammad said, go for self.
Or suffer the consequences. Do for
So
self and
you
suffer the
got
consequences.
you the original man, God of the universe. You the cream. You always gonna rise to the top, right? Then you go down in the degrees and they say useful land. And then you go into the degrees some more in the plus lesson and they say food, clothing, shelter. And then you got the master telling you go for self.
True.
God damn, I got the message.
True indeed. True indeed. Now let them know about your business that you got. Nurturing Our Seeds.
Nurturing Our Seeds, well, it's a nonprofit, 50c3, based in health and wellness. And
Because you got a beautiful farm. I'm going to say that though. I had the opportunity and the privilege to see the land and see all the things you producing. And I'm talking about, listen, God, it was inspirational to see a young brother, a young guy who taking to the teachings in real life, right? And producing something versus just a lot of people, you know what I mean? They just talking reality of God, but you living it.
thank you.
Yeah, everything real.
So Nurturing Our Seeds, we grow all natural food and herbs, no herbicides, pesticides, or genetically modified crops. So that means we even selective as to where we buy our seed. You know, and the teaching is just to maintain the teachings of the old, our elders. These teachings is still here. But if we don't grasp them again, we'd be stuck in a society where we totally dependent upon people to feed us. And that's essentially where we at right now.
True indeed.
All right, it's a saying, and I need to know who say this part itself, but it says, he who controls the food controls the people.
That's a fact.
All right, so the moment you begin to grow your own food, you begin to fight back. Right, that's sovereignty. That's
Freedom. Full
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now you becoming self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm. It was another beautiful black woman, and I can't remember her name, but she was a beautiful black woman, and she did something major. She said, I'm paraphrasing. She said, as long as I got beans in the cupboard and greens in the field, can't nobody tell me shit.
That's deep.
And it was something that ain't verbatim,
Right.
but essentially that's what she's saying.
I can sustain myself.
Okay. So you immediately begin to look at the world in a different view when you can sustain your own self. Because the first thing you go to work for is food,
Most definitely.
clothing, and shelter. Period. In that order.
Yeah.
Because you gonna eat. Your eating is more important than food on clothes on your back,
Right.
or a house over your head. You ain't gonna be stacking your bread, talking about I'm finna get in this house, and starve though. You gonna be still spending that shit to eat.
Most definitely.
So the first thing we do is go to work for food. And if you know for a fact that you can sustain your own health without working, you more selective on what kind of job you willing to take.
Right.
I don't have to take any goddamn job because I'm already eating. So now I can be picky now about what I'm gonna do. That's independence. They don't like that. They don't want you to have a choice.
Now you said, let me say this, because you said that's independence, right? Now we know there's 3 sciences that we taught that the enemy will never teach us. The science of business, the science of warfare, and the science of reproduction or mating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in essence, you're speaking along the lines of the science of business. Because, you know, with business, it's warfare. There was a point in time where our brothers,
Reproduction too.
Troy, all of it, Troy, even in that, it's definitely. But there was a time when farming was a part of our culture.
Oh yeah.
It was a part of our history. And at some point during integration or whatever, you know, all these different things that happened, that black people start giving up their land, they start squandering their land, and that no longer became a part of who and what we are, right? So it's inspirational to see a brother like yourself who has that desire, because you believe this. If anything ever go bad, I know I can feed my people.
Period.
I heard you say that. If it ever get tight, I'm in a position where we gonna eat.
I can feed my neighborhood.
Yeah,
I ain't just gotta feed my family.
most definitely.
For the last 12 years, this will be my 13th season. I know I produce enough food to feed my neighborhood. So I ain't gotta worry about no riot popping
Tell
up.
them how old are you though, beloved? To have that mentality, to have this type of knowledge, and knowing in your mind, if it ever come to this point, you are proper preparation prevents poor performance. You are already getting prepared for whatever may be coming down the line that you're able to sustain not only yourself and your family, but the community.
Indeed.
That's the heart of a servant.
Because if the shit hit the fan, man, it's gonna be a riot right up around me if they hungry. If they can't eat, they gonna be going crazy. So at least I know I got fresh drinking water and food for my people in my neighborhood. My 5-8 block radius. We good. How I know that? Because I sell food at the market. I sell enough food on a weekly basis that can feed my community.
Now, the reason why that's inspirational, you're a young brother who came up in the struggle, came up on the east side of Detroit, you know what I mean, went through your trials and tribulations, and now you at a point in your life where you're a man. You're a young man and you making manly decisions. More importantly, you're a God, so you're moving on God time. And you're doing exactly what a God's supposed to do. Taking charge of your post and all temple property and view. Securing your land, securing your place in this society. Talk about that.
Well, it started with history. When you know history, you know that agriculture is the foundation of civilization.
Facts.
Before agriculture, we was nomads, right? We roamed back and forth. We followed the food, all right?
Ooh.
We followed the meat. The animals went that way, we went that way too. And from that, in that area, we knew what vegetables to eat in that area, which plants and trees that was edible in this particular area. And that all came from trial and error. Many of people had to die from eating the wrong things for us to know, to have the knowledge of what things not to eat. That's why you know what to eat. You can't know what to eat if you not know what not to.
Right.
And that's, we don't circle back to that place again. We don't no longer know what to eat. We don't know what to put in our goddamn mouth. Okay? So agriculture being the foundation of civilization. So I started this organization based on agriculture. That's our foundation. Because most nonprofits fail because they dependent upon funding. So I said, if my nonprofit is going to be successful, we're going to have a product, which is food. Everything revolves around food.
True, indeed.
And as long as I got food, I got a product to sell, which is going to make my organization sustainable. No matter if I never get a funder to support me.
Right.
Long as I got food, people going to buy food, make my organization sustainable. Give us the things we can need to build and grow. The money, the food. You go straight in from food into economics.
Now I want to tap a little bit into the 5% teachings. I remember old Dirty said when he said Wu-Tang is for the babies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know when you look at the acronym of peace, please educate the lost children everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you look at the title,
Positive energy always creates elevation.
talk that talk. So when you look at your nonprofit organization, Nurturing Our Seeds, right? You know that word seed can be taken in many different directions. You know what I mean? And one aspect is the seed that we put into the soil, and another aspect is the seed that's put into the womb of the woman, and another aspect is the seed that come forth from the womb of the woman, which is our babies, our children, right?
Indeed.
How do we nurture those seeds right now so when they grow up or when they come up, you know what I mean, they can come up in an environment where they can thrive in, not an environment where they just surviving in, because most of our young brothers and sisters out here now, they survive because they don't know how to thrive, they don't know how to create, they don't know how to produce, you know what I mean? What would you say about that aspect of nurturing our seeds? How do we nurture the youth?
Well, you gotta, first you nurture them about what's going in their mouth. And then
how to eat to live.
What's going in their mouth. And then they head. Because you could be
what you eat.
You could be feeding the child poison.
True indeed.
And wondering why the child don't get it. You could be teaching them all the right shit and they don't get it. Because they can't think right with the shit you putting in their mouth.
So now it's a chemical imbalance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's chemistry.
Yeah. That's all it is.
How you expect a child to understand when their brain being developed off straight bullshit? Every cell in their body is being reproduced, and all it has is trash to reproduce with. You get?
Ain't no doubt.
You get it?
Talk.
It's a pile of trash right here, disguised as food, and that's what your body is supposed to use to produce new cells. Shit. What you think you gonna get?
Shit.
Okay. So it starts with what we put in our kids' mouth, so that their brain chemistry is right.
Now, why you think they
The most honorable life Muhammad told us years ago about the worm that go to your brain.
Trichinosis.
Go all the way to your brain and start eating your brain.
Upper spinal cord.
Come on.
When you partake in swine.
And that's just one aspect. That's what he had to give us now. It's a plethora of information out here telling us what this food is doing to our babies.
And they bearing witness to it.
And we keep giving it to them. So that's what nurturing our seeds about. Indeed, that seeds is synonymous to the babies as well as the seeds. They one and the same. You feed them bullshit, you're going to get bullshit. And that's before we even get to what we physically with the eyes, visually and mentally, verbally feed them.
That's interesting.
The food, the GMO crop that we out here feeding our children today.
We don't know the effects of it.
We know the effects because it's been out long enough, since 1996. So they know now that it's causing cervical cancer and all kind of cancers within our children.
Do you think our people are aware of that?
No, but that's why I'm here and I keep fighting. I've been fighting for over a decade now and teaching for over a decade.
My man.
So I ain't gonna stop.
That's why
I'm here.
Because
your children won't make it to 45. They only supposed to be a short workforce. They want them to be a workforce for a short period of time and get the hell out of the way without us having to take care of them.
Right.
So we can move a new workforce in right behind them. And if you can keep shortening their lifespan to 35 to 45 years by what you feed them, that keep you from not having to take care of the elderly later on. Now imagine your daughter 15 with cervical cancer. It's your fault, nigga. You was feeding her that bullshit.
Right.
You responsible. Because she shouldn't have nothing wrong with her at 13.
But here's why this interview is so important to me, beloved, and I believe it's important for the people because not only the fact that a lot of our people are not aware of this knowledge, right? But they not gonna get it raw like this. And then a lot of our young brothers out here who, you know what I mean, the enemy that misled them, they misguided, they not aware of who they are, things of that nature, so they just operating on the time that they own. But when you start tapping into being on God's time, with that comes accountability, with that comes responsibility. You know what I mean? So that's why I salute you, because you live in that reality. You know what I mean? You definitely live in that reality and you producing, because you take that serious in regards to making sure, how you said, ain't no pesticide, no GMOs, none of it. Everything is natural, straight from the earth, how it was in the beginning. You feel what I'm saying? So when you take in the right food and it creates that mental balance, and that mental balance creates that spiritual balance, and that spiritual balance begins to heighten your level of awareness. So now you're operating on a different frequency. But when we intake certain types of food, it basically dull our senses. Mm-hmm. It makes you lethargic. It makes you not want to be functional. You understand what I'm saying? So this is why the work that you're doing is so beautiful and so powerful, God, because at the end of the day, what you take in is what you put out.
That lethargy, what they call the niggeritis.
Oh, that nigga right there.
Right?
The itis. Yeah, look, you sleeping right after you eat all the bullshit.
Look, that's you trying to get up out of there. That's you trying to get up out of there.
Right.
Because you don't stuff so much bullshit up in here, you don't even want to be in there.
I don't even want to be aware of present.
Exactly.
Yeah, let me go on and
Because the body only designed, it's such a magnificent machine, it's designed to be you only can be in there under certain circumstances. You can't stay in there under every circumstance. Your ass drowned, you got to go.
Yeah.
If you get to leaking too much, you got to go.
Right.
You follow me? The heat leaves, you got to go.
So it all goes back to balance.
It's a balance, or you can't be in there.
You can't be functional.
No, fuck functional. You
The essence
can't
of
function it.
I got you.
You can't function it, cause it ain't you.
Mm.
It's yours. Yeah, it's yours, but it's not you. It's like some clothes you put on, but them the only clothes for this planet.
Talk about that part.
See, that's the only clothes for this planet.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be a cat or a dog or something, God don't go to dog.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go in there.
This the crown of His creation, though. The
Exactly.
manifestation of human beings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why they call it the temple, because you in there. You ain't it. You in it. See, that's what the teachers teach. When you get to the nitty-gritty of it.
Big Pressure TV, that's why I selected the guy, 'cause I knew he was going to talk that talk.
It get to the, when you
You
get to
just
the,
operating in, they call it a lump of flesh, but you operating in a vehicle.
exactly.
It's no different than you being in a car. In order for your car to run and function, you got to take care of the car. You got to get it tuned up. You got to get the oil changed. You got to go through all these different processes to keep the car on point. You know what I mean? The same way with the temple. The same way with the body. You got to take care of your body. But a lot of our people's not. They don't know that. So that's why.
But the enemy do.
We definitely know that. But this is why it's important for you, a young brother like yourself, to convey this to the people, because at the end of the day, the people are not aware of how they ill affect their temple, or how they ill affect their thought space by what they allow to come into their mind. You know what I mean? What they digesting mentally, what they digesting physically, what they digesting spiritually, and they're not aware of how it affects the whole system. So the first law of nature is what?
Self-preservation.
So if the first law of nature is self-preservation, everybody's duty and responsibility is to preserve the temple, for as long as you can. But everything has an expiration date on it except the spirit. You know what I mean? But as long as you're moving in this vehicle, it has to be preserved. And you have to know how to properly take care of it. This is why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is important. This is why our leaders, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and certain leaders are so important, because at the end of the day, imagine if we never knew what it meant to how to eat the leader.
Mm-hmm.
If that seed never resonated in your mind, that seed never resonated in your spirit, and you just out here like a savage, you know what I mean? You consuming everything. But as a result of that seed resonating in your mind, brings you to a point of awareness where you say, I got to preserve this temple. So in order to preserve this temple, I can't partake in any and everything that I desire.
Yeah. Indeed. And it's all come back to knowing how to heal yourself, too. Because, see, our people, our diet was our health. You know, somewhere back in the early 1900s when Rockefeller came and started creating the curriculums for the school system. Right? And we still got, the Rockefeller is still like in there but phasing out, because the Koch brothers is now the ones that's putting the curriculums into the schools. So, but during the time when Rockefeller was doing it, it was a lot of holistic schools around the country.
Ooh, we tapping into that thing now. You talking about a holistic.
It was a lot of holistic schools around the country. And they wanted to produce big pharma. So the only way to eradicate the holistic schools was to put a lot of funding into the big universities. And that's what they did. Rockefeller put a lot of funding in all the big universities, which ultimately got their curriculum into the universities, right? So people started going towards the schools for big pharma education.
Right.
And which ultimately made the smaller holistic schools die out, right? And then, once that was the case, they began to put out programs to where they would pay people. Because imagine you back in the early 1900s, these people poor, man. Shit, niggas was hungry.
Right.
They going through the Dust Bowl, Great Depression.
All type
The
of
white
shit.
man don't depleted the soil. He don't know how to grow. It took Dr. Carver, a black man, to come and save America. Teach them how to replenish their soil and crop rotation. See? They don't even tell you how Dr. Carver saved America from starvation.
Let me say this one thing real quick. And I want to go back to this, but you said you had a 6th grade education at the least, right?
Fifth.
5th. Because they passed you 6 and 7. But when you listen to the level of intelligence that the God have, right, it's obviously you didn't get it from the system.
No. I choose what I put in my head.
So, you know what I mean? You had to get it from a divine source to have you speaking on a collegiate level. You speaking in a sense of, no, this Harvard talk, this Princeton talk, this is the type of talk that a lot of people keep from our people. But this coming from a young black man, a young guy who tapped into a particular knowledge that allows him not understand but overstand. And that's why there's big pressure. That's why it's powerful, because with this content, the people got to get real shit. You know what I mean? We're going to give them this, we're going to give them that, but at the end of the day, the most important thing, because I want to cover all aspects of the culture, right? Because, you know, it's the good, the bad, the ugly, and the divine, but they got to get the realness.
Mm-hmm.
And the realness is this. You tap into a knowledge that allows you to elevate to a level of understanding where not only you can articulate, but you can execute, because you executing with what you're doing.
I was in the joint reading a dictionary. In Encyclopedia Britannica. I was in that joint, dog, just reading, man. At night, 3 in the morning, I got 5 books on my bunk, spread out like this, and I'm sitting on my foot locker with the books over like it's a desk.
Now, you know at certain spots you can't have the lights on, so you
Wasn't
probably
no
borrow
lights
the
on.
light.
Wasn't
You
no
borrow the
lights
light
on.
from the dead.
I just happened to be lucky, and the light from the hallway was giving me enough light to do my thing.
Ain't no doubt.
And I got 20/20.
Yeah.
So, and that's how it was. I read, I
You
studied.
became a light in the darkness.
All night. I ain't sleep at night with most. I wouldn't go to sleep till 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, because I was reading. It was quiet. Wasn't no commotion.
You know how we used to say, how they say, study to show thyself approved, right? That's what you did, God. That's what you doing.
No.
And you showing improvement.
I started studying herbs in 07. Dyson Bay gave me a book.
Rest in peace to the big brother.
That was my guru. Dyson Bay gave me a
Great
book.
one. He a great one.
He gave me this book called Blacked Out Through Whitewash.
Classic book.
And he said,
It ain't never this big though.
yeah.
But the impact, I'm talking about so
Whoa.
powerful.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's one of the ones that hit me.
Because you could take Black Out Through Whitewash and just start reading all the books mentioned in that book and be lit.
It's like a reference point of all the books. So even though we read a lot of the books, but you ain't even have to read all them books. All you had to do was read that little Blacked Out Through Whitewash, and it gave you all the necessary points to awaken that God inside of you.
So Dyson Bay gave me that book, and because I wanted some locks. I was trying to get locks, and
Like he had, what
Yeah.
locks you talking about?
Locks, like
yeah.
this.
That's
Like
I remember
this.
Dyson B.
and you know, because when I had started growing my locks in the street, but then when I found out I was going to penitentiary with all the penitentiary stories, my light skinned ass wasn't going in the joint with no hair. So in the county, I cut my shit bald.
Right.
So when I stepped in the joint, I was bald headed.
Right.
You ain't nigga, ain't none of that.
Off top.
Ain't no hair.
Yeah.
So when Dyson Bay rolled in, right, I seen these locks. I was like, damn, man, I want my locks. Boom. By then, I had been down about 6 months. I was getting comfortable and all that shit. Boom. So I approached him, asked him, could he help me grow my locks? He said, no problem. I got one requirement. You got to read this book and then kick it with me about it. And the book was Blacked Out Through Whitewash.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my grew up with Dyson Bay. And Dyson Bay had me, I don't know, man, niggas probably thought I was bugged out, son, because for 8 months, 8.5 months, I was walking around the joint doing this. 24. For 8.5 months.
Yeah.
Every time you see me, I'm doing this.
Right.
So in hindsight, I could only imagine what niggas is thinking. This nigga crazy.
Right. You was preparing for them lot.
But I wasn't thinking about what them niggas was thinking, but in
Right.
hindsight, I can imagine what they was thinking.
Right.
Even brothers was, man, you ain't gonna never get locked. Your head too straight. Your head too, nigga, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
All that, so
You locked that motherfucker
about
up.
8.5 months, man, doing this shit for 8.5 months, all day long. Finally locked up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But back then, I had gained so much knowledge from Dyson Bay and was on this book shit. Cause man, I was 2 years in my bit. I wasn't studying the Bible no more. I'm out here. I'm open.
You tapping into the upper regions.
Yes. Hickseel in my unit, Dyson Bay next door, and Hickseel was like, bow, hit me with Black Man of the Nile back with Dr. Ben.
Salute to all our brothers.
Because he seen me studying. One day he seen me with this big old book. The book had to been about this tall, this wide. And it was a timeline of all the ancient cultures I had got from the library.
It wasn't the Roasted Christian.
No, it was, what was it? It was the Smithsonian.
Okay.
It was a Smithsonian book, big old book, about this thick with a
You know that
bunch of
motherfucker
pictures.
with a big ass book.
And I'm sitting in there looking at it, and I'm stuck on this Egyptian page.
Right.
So Hickseel stopped and kicked it with me for a second, and then he came back with this book by Dr. Ben, Black Man of the Nile.
Classic book.
Yeah, and
Great
then
book.
he had seen me reading too, because from the Blacked Out through Whitewash, I wrote a book list, and I sent the book list home. Right? So on that book list, I remember that first list had the ISIS papers.
Classic book.
Keys to the Colors by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing.
Francis, ain't no doubt.
And
These like must reads, bro. It's not even like that was a prerequisite at a certain point in the classroom of God, right? When you step into that classroom, it's certain books that, Behold the Pale Horse, the ISIS paper, Message to the Black Man, Blacked Out Through Whitewash, As a Man Thinketh. The list goes on and on, from the Art of War to whatever you
that
think.
was on the list too, that first list, Behold the Pale Horse.
Yeah, classic book. Yeah, William Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point that I'm making is, those books are no longer like, it's like they lost in translation. Our young brothers don't even understand the wealth of knowledge that comes from. That's why they say you want to hide something from a nigga when you put it in a book. Because the average young brother, because his mind is not awakened to understand that, in order to learn yourself, or in order to begin the process of initiating yourself into the classroom of God, you got to do what the angel Gabriel told Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. When he said it in Arabic, Ikra, read in the name of our Lord.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the process began at.
Mm-hmm. That's it. But then when I got that 120 and they told me knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, I understood then that the main aspiration of God is knowledge.
Ooh.
So that just really set me.
And having the ability to know the ledge so you don't fall victim to the enemy's trick knowledge.
Yeah, or fall off the edge.
Man.
Into the devil's uncivilization.
That's what our people don't understand. Like, so when you come to that point of awareness, because knowledge gives you awareness,
mm-hmm.
and it allows you to navigate through the darkness. We living in a dark reality. We living in a dark world. We living in a world that makes us other than ourselves. And you can't come back into your true self unless you tap in to something that's going to lead you to that point. You know what I mean? And it begins with knowledge. That's why in every school of thought you go to, the first thing you see is what? Man, know thyself.
Mm-hmm. That was another one. I got that one straight out of Egypt.
Yeah.
As soon as I stepped into Egypt, it was like they're waiting on you. Like, bro, you got to.
And it was damn near like you went to Egypt.
Yeah.
You just.
And that's what started me studying herbs. So I went to the Encyclopedia Britannica and started studying the body. You know how they go? You can go to the certain one and they got all of them that flipping and them clear pages, and you can lay them on top of each other and start seeing how the body put it. So I started studying the body, the systems of the body, and from there I started studying herbs, right, on how to heal the body. So since I couldn't get the mystery teachings out of Egypt, I jumped over to North Africa and started studying the Yoruba culture, Ifa.
And you steady digging.
Steady digging.
Getting to the root.
Yeah.
I gotta keep digging.
Because, and I didn't find out till later on, maybe 8 years into my studying, that the Egyptians during one of the invasions left and went over to Nigeria, the West Coast, to Mali and the Dogon and all of these. And
Right.
You follow me?
Right.
So I didn't find that out till later, but just my own studies took me to West Africa. Because I had my homeboy rolled in. Right now, and he a priest of Palo Mayambe, right? The Palo priest, a Tata. So this is how I get all my, stay current and accurate and keep getting my teachings from the West Coast or from the Congo perspective of our spiritual teachings.
That's that warrior
Right.
perspective.
So, man, I done been everywhere from Benin to Nigeria, Ifa, Vadum, Santo, the water worship of the saints, Santeria and Palo Mayambe. We done studied everything. But he took me to Nigeria, so we came up with this saying, and we was gonna get a patch made for the club, our social club. It's from the Niger to the Nile, right? From the Niger to the Nile, and the Nile to the Niger. Because we all the same people, but you got to dig in deep to realize every culture is the same.
Everything is one.
But
Your Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he said, he who goes out in search of knowledge is on the path of God until he returns. So once a person go out and he begin the process of pursuing knowledge, it's a never-ending journey. There's no point of return. There's no coming back, because you live in a universe that is constantly growing and evolving. You live in a universe that is constantly expanding. And the mind is likened unto the universe. You know what I mean? Therefore, it has to constantly be fed. It has to constantly grow and evolve.
I know mine do.
Yeah, all the time.
I can't
Yeah.
mine got to. But like with the herbs. So when I started studying the body and health and healing, I wasn't even studying herbs because of a healing properties. I started studying herb on some magical shit. Because whenever you hear of African spirituality, you automatically think spooky shit.
Right,
Spookism. Voodoo,
Spells,
spookism. You never look at
Put it in a negative connotation.
Exactly. So me immediately, I even went into the culture with that mindset. I want to know the spiritual aspect of everything, of these herbs.
Right.
And people outside of the culture look at it and say magic. It's spiritual.
Science. Yeah.
To us, it's spiritual, it's science.
Yeah.
Right? Because everything got an energy.
Knowledge reduced to a system.
But it take a minute of being in the culture to understand that we ain't dealing with spookism, we dealing with science. We love talking about the energy of this plant.
True indeed.
And what you follow, that energy has the power to do this.
And the properties in it, how it can affect it.
See, so I wasn't even looking at it from a healing property at first. And then maybe 2 years in, I left, my lessons came, right? I got my 120. And then the spookism went out the door.
Let's go.
I stopped looking at the African's perspective from spookism and started looking at it from strictly science. All these herbs is for the healing of the body.
That's why I call you Dr. Seven of the city.
Fuck all that spooky shit I can't really put a finger on. I can pontificate about it.
Right.
But do I really know what the fuck I'm talking about? No. But when I talk about the healing aspect, now we can see that. We can get in the microscope in the lab and we can look at this.
True indeed.
You see what I'm saying? So I stopped focusing on the spiritual aspect of herbs and started looking at the straight healing aspects, the here and now aspect. And that came straight out of that Ifa shit because I was studying again. Remember I told you I was studying to be a pastor.
Right.
So when I got deep into the Ifa teachings of West Africa, Yoruba people, I was studying to be a high priest. And each high priest had to have a garden. And they had to be able to identify.
They got to know the process.
They got to be able to identify 100 healing herbs. You got to be able to identify 100 healing herbs and have a garden in order to be a high priest in the African tradition of Ifa. So that's how my farm and my nurturing our seeds developed.
How the vision came
From me
about.
wanting, in order to be a high priest, I had to have a garden. So I started there.
Cultivating the land.
That was one of the reasons I started, right?
Look at the evolution.
Because I could identify useful land. So if I'm really gonna be a high priest, I got to have my own garden.
What the God said in the beginning of the Bible, and it talks about, when you're talking about the land, subdue it, exercise power and dominion. We don't even understand that reality, bro. We don't even understand what it means. Because when you become God, you have power and dominion first over yourself. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But after you have it over yourself, then you have to exercise it over the creation. And that science comes from learning how to command the creation, because that's what God do. Being it is. So guess what? When you put that seed in the ground and you begin the process of nurturing and cultivating that seed, you commanding that seed to be and produce what it's supposed to produce. Kun fire kun, being it is.
Indeed.
Hey.
Was that a question, Carl?
No, it ain't no question. We just, you know what I mean? It's a general statement.
Yeah, indeed. So,
to add on.
That's how nurturing our seeds came about, from me studying these different aspects, being able to see useful land, being able to wanting to be a high priest and knowing the requirements of being a high priest. You follow what I'm saying? And then eventually through the studies I grew out of all of that. I didn't want that no more. I realized that wasn't for me. You follow me?
Right.
Through growth and development. Sometimes you go into a situation thinking I'm this, like some niggas become a gangbanger and then they realize that ain't for me 20 years later. You know what I mean?
True
so
indeed.
it's the same concept, right? And in all of these things, you gotta just remember, I had to remember not to get lost in that shit.
Right.
Because if you chasing the mystery, you can't be responsible for the helping to cure the problem.
True indeed.
Because you're chasing the mystery. How you gonna focus on what's here? So that's one of the things I learned, man, over the last 10, 12 years, man. I ain't chasing no mysteries.
God is real.
Yeah.
In real time.
My knowledge got to be something I can use right now. Even though I continuously soak up a lot of different knowledges like it just comes to me, because my name is Magnetic Sun, which means in simple 2 words, like it's to attract and shine. You know what I'm saying? What I'm supposed to be attracting, knowledge. And I'm supposed to shine it back on you like a sun.
True indeed.
You know what I'm saying? And then that second part, the rule of Allah, is just simply saying that I rule myself. I rule my physical manifestation. Because my Allah is my body, my arm, leg, arm, head. And who is the ruler of that? That's me. So I'm Magnetic Sun, ruler Allah.
Talk that talk, God. Tell them what I got to tap in at Big Pressure TV.
Oh, man, because this is the place that I do believe you're going to get the inspiration, the knowledge you will be able to give and show to the youth. We've been through it. You know what I'm saying? I've been there. I created this for the youth, essentially, because I was one of them. I'm one of them. I'm one of the youth that the system failed.
Man.
The
At
school
one
system,
point, you was a product of the environment.
yeah, the school system didn't teach me nothing. So if it happened for me in the 80s, right, when it was like 25 students in the class and now it's like 40 students in the class, what do we expect our children to get? We responsible. So that's why you tap in here, to get the knowledge, to get the inspiration.
Oh man.
I'm local. I'm in Detroit. The kids can come out. You can come out, bring your family out to nurturing our seeds. We got something coming up this year. We putting a farm stand up in a nice little meeting hall with a kitchen, so we have a place to start teaching and holding meetings and things of that nature.
True indeed.
Yeah.
Tell them what's next for nurturing our seeds.
Man, that's what's coming up in 2023. We about to put us a farm stand up. so that we can begin to reach, have a greater impact in our community. You know, somewhere that the people can actually come get fresh produce. Don't just have to meet me at the market. Don't have to catch me at certain days. It should just always be fresh produce on deck at the market stand. You know, things like that.
Sure indeed. Any last words for the people?
Peace.
Big Pressure TV, you already know what it is. We had the God, Magnetic Sun in the building, shining, representing.